Hey, sports card fans, welcome back to another episode of Two Guys, One Hobby. This is our 20th episode, Don. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did. We had a draft in our office. So there were 7 of us. So it was like 1 through 7 picks a team in the playoffs. There was 14 teams, and then it snaked back, and I had the 6th pick. And I was like, here's my money. And I pulled the Tom Brady. I got the Chiefs with the 6th pick.
Ooh.
And won a little bit of money. So I had it. Normally I could have cared less who won, but I had a rooting interest.
Yeah, we had a little office pool. You pick a square and all that stuff, and yeah, just the numbers were not in my favor. I think I won last year, though. I won the big pot last year. So yeah, it was. First half was a little boring. Second half was obviously really exciting in the overtime.
Really boring.
The game could have gone either way in the second half,
right?
But yeah. So good. Well, we have a guest as always, and it's been your turn to pick the guest. So if you want to do like a little introduction, and we'll get him on.
And I believe this is the first YouTuber I met when I went to the National in Chicago in 2021. Went out there by myself, hadn't met anyone yet. I literally think I was on the floor about 5 minutes, and I ran into this guy, and we walked around, and he had already seen kind of everything, but he still walked around with me. And then we went to dinner, and then we went to Mike Moynihan's get together and met you.
Yep, and that's when I first
were down the bar.
And
a native Chicagoan. I don't know what you call it. He can correct.
He'll correct us.
But let's bring on Chuck, Northside guy.
Yeah. Hi, Chuck. How are you?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm well. Chicagoan.
There we go.
Yeah.
I wasn't even close.
Yeah. Lifelong native. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah. And you picked up all those old T206, I think, cigarette packs. Yeah. I'll never forget that. That was very cool.
Yeah, it was fun meeting you and fun spending the day. Well, before we get into the topic of our evening, I want to say first off and leading off, congratulations, gentlemen, on your election. Well deserved in each case to the Sports Card Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
I am in esteemed company here tonight, so I
appreciate that, and I appreciate your support.
Yes,
we'll send you the invoice when we're done recording. So.
well, I'll try to bring my best content here tonight to live up to your lofty standards.
Yeah. Yep. Well, Chuck, maybe you can. We'll get into the topic. Actually, we have our guests. Just give a little background for those not familiar with either your channel or your collection, and for those who are not familiar with Chuck Northside Guy and his YouTube channel, I will have a link to his channel in the description of this video. So definitely go check Chuck's channel out. Wow, I got that out the first time. And definitely check out his videos. Amazing collection that we're going to get into some discussion on. So Chuck, if you want to give just a brief background of your collecting history, which will lead into really the main topic that we want to talk about today.
Sure. And I need to go back to the beginning because it's going to be evoked later on. I got my first pack of baseball cards at when we were checking. I was with my mother, and we were at what was known as a Ben Franklin store. I don't know if you ever had those back in the day. So this was 1974, south side of Chicago. And my sister and I were there. I probably was acting up, and she just bought a pack of baseball cards. I still have those cards. They're well gloved. But the next year, I started in 1975 collecting. So my collecting journey went from 1975 as a 7-year-old boy up till 1984. And I collected it all, or what I thought was it all. So baseball, football, and basketball. And in 1984, I kind of put the cards away. They stayed in the shoe boxes, and my mother thankfully never threw them away. And when she downsized a long time ago, she gave me these boxes, and then I kind of was schlepping them around as I was moving about. So in 2018, I had just sold a business, and I had time finally to go through the old closet and look at things. I opened these boxes for the first time in 34 years as a middle-aged man, and I was right back to being a kid again. I was organized, and I was just the feelings of the cards that I wanted, and I had never been on eBay before. And I'm a father of 2 sons, and my boys, showed me how eBay worked, and of course I took it from there. And I had never heard of graded cards. I had no idea. I had this one 1933 Gaudi card. It was a Victor Sorrell, and I picked it up on a lark. So back in my day, you would go to the Holiday Inn for a collector's convention.
Hey, we were all around back in your day.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And so I would go with my dad. He would take me because he liked cards back, and he was a Bowman collector back in the 50s. Anyway, so we'd go to these shows, and these guys would set up on their cardboard tables, and you just buy, and I built out various sets. And then I got into, when I was a kid, you'd see on the back of things like Baseball Digest, there was this gal named Renata Galasso from like the Bronx or Brooklyn or something. And she would sell whole sets. And so I bought my first whole set, saved up all my little pennies, and spent for $7.99 a 1977 Top set. And it came in. And that set, I just organized it every different way. And it was just a love. So it was stepping back into that tradition of being this was a hobby. I love sports. And so this story probably is similar to many people. So I was cashed up from the sale of this business, bought off the wife with all the trinkets that she wanted. All the debt was paid, college funds were paid. And so I said, I had nothing to do. So I started buying and buying and buying and buying. Everything. And so I started purchasing the 1933 Gaudi. That became my thing. Well, then I heard about YouTube, never been on YouTube, and started, as with many collectors, I found Mike, baseball collector, Blue Jacket 66, Silver Jack, a Phi. Joey Brings It, if you remember him.
Yep.
And it was a natural progression from there. And then Dave, Blue Jacket 66, had a contest, and I was inspired. And that was my first video about 3 or 4 years ago. And since then, I think I have like 105 low quality videos showcasing my collection, but also, in my years, I've also been a participant in some of the other events of our time. The PWCC trimming case, the FBI found me and was interviewing me as a kind of a lead witness against them when they were trying to build that case. That got settled. PWCC paid me off in terms of making me whole for all the cards. But it really scared the shit out of me that I had all these cards I had purchased in Reliance encased. And so I really had to reflect on it. So that's my story as a collector. But what I found is in those first years, I was buying everything. I was ripping packs. And if you see that white closet right behind me, it's kind of a half closet. My wife and I live down in the city of Chicago. And so we don't have a big house or anything. We have a wonderful place here. But I just don't have much space. And what I found is, when you're buying all this product, it really starts taking up space. And I was taking on grading. I got into the whole PSA grading, spending stupid amounts of money every year grading cards. Well, then with Nat Turner coming on board, you weren't getting automatic 10s anymore. And so what I found is, what am I doing here? And so I can go into that in a minute. But that's kind of an overview, and I'll go into more detail of how I built out my vintage journey and what I don't really talk about on my channel, which is my modern card journey. So,
hey, Chuck, can we rewind a little bit here? And you'll find this is typical on our channel. We'll go over the place, but you brought something up that I thought was really interesting. You said the FBI found you. How did they know that you had these cards for PWCC? Like, what is the story behind that? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. So first of all, I think the main reason is the lead agent was here in Chicago. The FBI office in Chicago is about a block or two from where I have an office. And so I think there was convenience. I think they had from some kind of discovery process a list of who bought.
Oh. Sales
and
records. Yeah.
they had records, purchase records, and where the person lived. And they saw I had, because remember, I was like a drunken sailor. I was buying everything. And PWCC I found right away. And I was just buying a bunch of stuff because I liked the setup that they had at the time. They were offering the product I wanted. And I was winning a lot of those auctions. I didn't find them very competitive. So I found that was a great source at that time. Well, I had about 5 cars that were trimmed that they admitted to. And they proactively reached out as part of some kind of settlement. And I made some videos about this. In fact, Don, I think it was right after you and I met at the 2021.
Yeah, I remember those videos, watching those.
Yeah, so I thought PWCC did the right thing. Of course, I don't know, were those 5 that they felt they were caught out? And so, I get a little leery when I see like some of these T206 cards kind of float around in the holder, whereas others really stay really nice and neat, and they just look a little too thin and crisp and neat. And so I think we all suffer from that. And remember, there used to be a lot of trimming. There probably still is. And we act in reliance when we get these things from PSA. There's a lot of trust there. Yeah, I think it's better. I think having a graded card is better than not having graded. But when I got back in, I was buying a lot of these 33 Gaudis ungraded. And then I would send them in once I figured out the PSA. And the dealer was telling me, oh, they're X mint or what have you. And I was getting them back and they were 3 and 4s. And so, you don't have that standard. It's some guy trying to upsell you.
Right.
And so, the grading, as we all know, gives you a language to speak in.
It's not perfect, but yes.
It's better. And I don't know what.
I agree. I feel more comfortable buying graded, except for a few dealers that, I kind of trust, or it's a card that, like, why would someone?
Right.
Were those mainly T206s that were involved with?
No. T206 is a pretty recent iteration of my collection. Okay. I'd say the last couple of years. So those were 53 Bowman colored, exclusively, actually. Exclusively.
Really?
Yeah. So I started that collection. I will admit to being just just ripping Bowman 53 off. I mean, he did such a great job with his videos when he was beautifully curating and sharing, taking us along for that ride when he was building that set out. And I just said he just totally inspired me to get that. And
it's a beautiful set.
Oh my gosh.
It is. And, one of my best friends in the hobby, but he's also a professor of photography and film. And so I'd like to give him a little ribbing that it's not fair that his videos are so good.
He's a gifted digital storyteller.
Yes,
and it's must viewing.
When you see him pull out the coffee and
oh my gosh,
a good video.
Yeah, I just I lack that gene to be interesting in a storytelling way, but must viewing for sure.
Absolutely, that's your channel.
Yeah. So I've evolved as a collector, and I kind of like to share a little bit of that. And I think part of me intends to be a little bit provocative, not to make enemies, but just to throw a little bit sharper edged, perhaps thinking. And fair enough, I'll do it. So I want to. I have heard a lot of guys in our community talk about fewer but better. I think this concept became clear to me with Jay Stottlemyre, who I think has an amazing collection. I think we all can agree on that.
Yep.
And he will be the first to admit that, and I think I remember from his earlier videos, he was consolidating around Babe Ruth and just these amazing vintage pre-war. And, I think he showed me that you could be happy with a set of really amazing cards, but it could probably fit into a box. Yeah. And I don't know how big his collection is, but my sense is that's kind of the vision here. And he was trading his way into that. I would say in about the last 6 months, I've heard more guys speak about this in our community, about this notion of fewer but better. But nobody ever talks about, well, how do they get to that kind of notion? And, we're all collectors. You're not going to hear the big, investment word out of me. I'm not going to, be sports card investor or anything like that. But, how do we get to that point? So, I thought I'd offer kind of my journey as a way of maybe, I don't know, sussing out how I got there at least, and maybe others can challenge me. And again, this is just my opinion. What I've appreciated about the YouTube card community is that I love seeing the different ways guys collect and the different areas of focus. I learn. I'm rooting them on. I'm certainly commenting and all that. But everybody has their own journey. So when I got back into the hobby, I started going after the dream cards from my boyhood. So an example, 1975 Topps George Brett. Talk about, that was like, you wanted that card back.
Right.
The 1976 Hank Aaron, I think was his last playing day card.
Correct.
The 1976, 77 Mark Fidrich with the rookie cup.
77, yeah.
Yep. And so I first went in and those were some of my first graded cards. So after I kind of filled up, the wish list cards, like I said, I was buying all this product because I'd never seen a Chrome card. I was going for the base because that's what I was used to. But here's what I realized. I love ripping packs. I still do. But then it became apparent after, in 2018, 2019, I bought a lot of stuff. And so the question became, you have to store this. So I started getting the boxes and all that. And then, in that little closet, I had about 3 or 4 shelves. I was running out of space. So it adds up quickly. And then the second thing is what I realized is very few modern cards have actual value. And I learned that, from my PSA grading. I was grading everything. I wasn't very discerning at first, and it was expensive. And I thought, well, I'll just sell them someday. Well, so few cards, particularly if they aren't a 10, have value. So I found that you really have to be discerning. So that was an early lesson I had to learn. And by the way, I think I'm still learning that lesson. Let me give you an example. I've been burned, as so many people have, by active players. So I collect the modern stuff because I have 2 sons, and I want to get them in the hobby. It's something we do together. Basketball and baseball is what we do. So, we've been Tatis collectors. We've been Lewis Robert collectors. We've been Wander Franco collectors. We've been even Mike Trout to some extent. And beautiful rookie cards, 10, parallels, the whole 9 yards. Well, then these guys go do something stupid, or they have an injury in the case of Trout year after year.
Wander Franco.
Yeah. And Wander Franco, whatever's going on there, it doesn't seem really good. And,
right.
The question is, so I ultimately arrived at a conclusion that many people arrive at is you got to be really careful with players who are still in career. So that's an obvious lesson. So then, I have all these cards that I graded, and I realized, I'm just not deriving the satisfaction. I'm going to begin selling them because I need to preserve the space, and I'm not deriving any enjoyment. There's no real value here, and there's no sentimental attachment to these guys. So I go on to eBay, and I've been selling about 100 to 150 cards a year for the last 3 years off eBay. And I have about 150 on my store right now. And I feel real good about that. I feel it's a good way of thinning out the collection. I feel it's a good way to effectively monetize some of that. I will tell you, I'm selling them all probably at a loss. And it's not just because the eBay fees, but then, I sell more than $650 a year. So then they send you an annual tax thing, I'm paying taxes and then all this stuff. So I ultimately, it's all at a loss, but it's better than nothing is the way I'm thinking about it.
Right.
Plus I get the enjoyment of, it's just a nice, clean and reduced collection. So then the other thing is there's just so much product coming out every year. It's just an assault. And to have kept up that pace of acquisition, in addition to the storage issue, what do you do with it? How do you manage it? How do you even play with it down the road? And so even, examples might be, I was really getting into getting Derek Jeter autos or Mariano Rivera autos, et cetera. Well, those guys are in contract and they're issuing new cards every year. So it's how rare is a Jeter or a Trout even auto? And so I find that isn't really a good way to, the value kind of decreases over time. But some of those cards I just wanted because I wanted. I mean, I actually have a really cool, I think, baseball card auto collection. Where I am now with modern is I focus on 4 or 5 players and only a few set or what do you call them? Like Topps Chrome Black. I love that set. That doesn't get much publicity, but I love the look of them cards. The Bowman Chrome, but I get only the orange refractor or Topps Chrome. And that's all I collect now is 4 or 5 players. So I get maybe 15 cards a year. And I find that kind of scratches the itch. And, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, the obvious usual suspects. Yep. And thankfully, those are players I really enjoy, and they haven't,
I remember you doing a video that I loved. You took you watched the Silver Jackify video, and he recommended buying a certain amount of cards, and you bought them. And I know you're not a flipper, but you kind of were in this situation, and you did very well.
Oh yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because during COVID. So early on, as I said, Silver Jackify, I mean, how can you not love the guy? Never met him in person, but, it feels like if I did, I've known him a lifetime kind of personality. Anyway, he had a video probably, in 2018 or 19, where he said, here are undervalued rookie cards. And he had a Barry Bonds, he had Greg Maddux. He even had Griffey, and I got and I didn't give a shit about Griffey at the time, but I, like everyone, I bought my 1989 Upper Deck PSA 10, and I think I got it for, I don't know, $425. And then during COVID, I went back to that video and I looked at it, and by golly, Joe was right, and all those cards had just shot to the moon. So I sold all of them. It was the one smart thing I did during COVID with my collection. I sold my Griffey, I think, for $5,500.
Yeah,
and I
return on 4.25.
Yeah, I mean, so the return was great, and again, I didn't buy it as an investment, but it was stupid money. And I guess the problem I had with that is it's an awesome card. I love that card, but $5,500 for a card that continues to be graded by the hundreds every year.
You can find them all over the place.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can buy that card now for, I don't even know, but probably close to what you bought the other one for.
Well, there you go. So, and then I took the money and I put it into a 56 Jackie and a 56 Ted Williams. So I overpaid for those, but at least I have something that is, I think, of durable value. So, I guess that's the story. And I guess what triggered this thought most recently is I've been watching Ty and Chasing Cardboard, and I think those are excellent videos. It's just catnip. And I love his spirit. He has his storytelling ability himself. But I have seen these stories, as I'm sure you guys have, where he goes to these homes and he's speaking with somebody, family members whose father or brother bought. And now that person has sadly passed on, and dad's collection now needs to be busted up, and the family doesn't know what to do with it. They aren't collectors. They don't know what the value is. So he reached out to Ty, and Ty walks in, and it's just like one of those, I've seen some of these videos where the whole house is taken over by boxes and boxes of cards, unopened product, the whole damn thing.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I just find that unsettling. And it's sad for the family, and then they end up selling because they're just so eager to just get rid of stuff. And Ty is a shrewd businessman, and I'm not saying he's doing a fair bargain. He's being upfront with it all and sensitive to the story. I know, but nonetheless, I think he's getting a great deal, and I think the product is being acquired for pennies on the dollar. No doubt.
It's funny you said that, because my wife the other day, I'm not gonna say names, but there's a certain YouTuber I talk to quite a bit, and I usually have it on speakerphone, and she knows who it is, and she's like, "Do you trust that guy?" I'm like, "With my life." She goes, "I don't mean to be morbid, but if you pass, is he a good person to call to get rid of your cards?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I'm like, that's a good video to make. talking about
My
that.
wife knows who for my Boggs collection.
Right.
She's aware of the members of the Boggs Trust, and for other cards, she knows of other people to reach out to that she knows I trust and would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now technically, all my cards are going to my son. So really, as long as he's around when I go,
See,
everything goes to him. But he may want to liquidate everything. He may like,
right.
I don't know where to start.
Even if he does want to, John, he needs those contacts.
Yeah. Yep.
So I sadly lost a friend and worked with his wife to handle. She was bereaved, and they had assets all over the place. It was kind of an old-fashioned setup where she raised the kids and wasn't involved in the finances and didn't know anything of where accounts were. Anyway, we had to put that together. So it inspired me to put together a document that I wrote it out. I called it Post-Death Instructions. And it's everything, all my passwords, usernames, all the accounts. But I have a section in here for baseball card collection.
Yeah.
And so my boxes in that closet there are labeled, whatever, 1933 Gowdy, 1953 Bowman, what have you. And I have detailed instruction, this box should call so-and-so at Heritage and make sure that they get it.
I'll spell my last name for those cards that go to Pittsburgh.
There you go. Well, we can make a deal. And I say, comps, please be sure to research prices, check out vintage card. So I've educated, my wife, and she'll probably give it to one of the boys. And sure, I want them, but the reality is they don't care about these cards. What they like are the LeBrons and the modern stuff.
Yeah.
And you never know when they get older.
I don't know how the kids are, but they may grow into that.
Maybe, but the money I popped into this, I think that the cash would much be preferred for.
I mean, like I could see my son liquidating to put a nice down payment on a house or something.
Exactly. And I'm cool with that because I'm getting the value. This is my hobby, and I'm collecting it in my manner. But nonetheless, chasing cardboard. I don't want a situation where I have piles and piles of stuff just hanging around, which are just going to get tossed. And furthermore, I'm just not interested in that as much anymore. I'm trying to be very select, and I've learned a lot of lessons to get there. So, and then the real thing is, again, referencing the missus. There's this Japanese lady named Marie Kondo. I don't know if you've heard of this gal. She's a cleaning expert. She's a minimalist.
Okay.
So she has a show on Netflix. I had to watch a few episodes. Oh my God. This lady is a fanatic with cleaning, and everything gets tied into like Zen spirit and all that stuff. So we went through a big decluttering thing. And if you listen to Marie Kondo, I should have maybe 10 cards.
Yeah.
And that's it. I should have 10 books on my bookshelves. I should have nothing sentimental in the closets whatsoever. No picture, nothing. Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I do think there's value in the decluttering. But then again, I don't want to denigrate a guy that has spent 30 years. I've only been in 6, and I just don't have the space for it or the interest. But for another guy, they may want to collect all the money, and I love it, and I love it, and I love it.
But I have room, and it's.
Can I interrupt you right there? You said you've only been in it for 6, and I used to say that too. I've only been doing this for 4 years. You said you started in 1975, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I believe you said you never got rid of those cards, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
You've been doing it for almost 50 years.
I know.
And I thought that same thing. I was like, you're right. Like, he's like, you haven't been collecting for 3 years. You took a break, but did you get
4-year break? Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah.
I'm not busting on you. I know what you're saying.
You can. Fair point.
But I thought that was a cool way to look at it. Like,
yeah.
Right.
And I'll tell you the other thing that I think there's a thoughtful debate that we could have in the community of when does vintage begin. And I know you hear some of the old timer collectors, they have a certain definition, and it's all in reference point to where we are in age.
Yep.
A 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old is going to have a different idea, I think, of where vintage begins. And I have a real hard time accepting that 75 tops baseball is vintage. I mean, that's like one of the ultimate sets in my pantheon. Yeah. And but I mean, at this point, I got to get realistic. It's practically 50 years ago. Yeah. So I guess it's vintage for a lot of people.
I want to bring up a couple of things that you talked about again on having a more streamlined or smaller collection. And there's, as you brought up, there's multiple reasons why someone may have to or want to have a smaller collection. In the case of space, limited space. Hey, I just can't have 10,000 cards. I need to consolidate. Or like Orlando, a collector's dream. He is doing some consolidating, getting, selling or trading some cards that, don't mean as much to him now, but will afford to get him some of his dream cards that he just couldn't afford to pay out of pocket. And just like Josh J. Stoudemire, a lot of the cards, I think he did some trading and buying up, so to speak.
Right.
So he wanted that one Ruth. Well, to get that, he had a couple Ty Cobbs, and he made a deal, and then this and that, and then he was able to get that Ruth. So that's another reason why a collector may want to consolidate. So you got room, you got wanting to go after some larger cards, and maybe want to get rid of the stuff that you just don't have interest in anymore.
Right.
And I think the last thing I want to bring up is, and not so much when we had Vince, New York Yanks fan 7, but when we talk about having a smaller collection, and I think, Chuck, you brought this on up before we got online here. It just because you may have a small collection, and so you hear in the hobby, someone has a smaller collection. The first thing you really think of is, it must be a high-end collection. It's either like you either have a small high-end collection, or you have, like me, a lot of cards that may be mid-grade or whatever. That doesn't have to be the case. You could have a small collection, one, maybe because you don't have a lot of room, but they don't have to necessarily be high-end cards. They could be cards that are just sentimental to you. You talked about the Mark Fidrich card. Mm-hmm. That's not a huge expensive card, but if it brings you back to your childhood, or there's something about the player or the team, so you could just, again, for everyone's knowledge here, you could have a small collection, but that doesn't mean they're all like 8s, 9s, and 10s of these, high value cards.
Right.
You could have a small shoebox or a small box or 3 shelves of cards that just mean the world to you, regardless of what they're worth.
Well, and I wouldn't consider your collection small. I mean, you may not have 5,000 cards, but you got a lot of 53 Bowmans, you got a lot of 33 Gaudies, a lot of Tito 6s. I know you're going to bring up Benny Begal. It's your one SUP card.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with my lone SUC. But you're absolutely right. But here's the heart of the matter is for all of us. And again, I'm just giving one opinion here, and in no way am I denigrating anyone's collecting journey, because we all love the same thing. We just are pursuing, and a lot of what I'm saying is checking boxes with people. And it's like, yeah, no kidding, Chuck. But it's collect what you love. And so where I've evolved is I think I checked a lot of boxes. I experimented with the modern again, just because that was where I left off. And I came to a limit with that, but there are certain cards, like my 33 guy, the 53 Bowman, the T206, and then I've been selectively buying players like in the 50s era. And that's a big project of mine, probably over the next 5-10 years, your Mantles, Rob, Jackies, et cetera. And it's that they have durable enjoyment. I consistently enjoy pulling out those cards and looking at them. Mm-hmm. It never gets old. They have an evergreen sense of enjoyment when I put them in my display case here in my office. When I just pull out a box, I've had a long day at the office, I just want to flip through some of my cards. I derive the pure collector enjoyment from these cards. And so
that's well said, Chuck. I believe a lot of us, and that's why we kind of gravitate to each other, because we feel that way. I'm looking at a display case here right now, and it's just like, I never get, just like you said, I never get tired of looking at those. You're so right.
And to me, isn't that the essence of what this collecting experience is all about? Whatever that it is. I'm just telling you what it is for me. For me, I've now identified the fewer, and by the way, fewer is still probably 1,000 cards overall.
Well, it's a term, yeah.
But it's fewer than you can get crazy in this thing. And at the same time, I'd give my left arm to get into Mike Moynihan's office and look at the beast. I mean, I
Right.
a kid in a candy store. So I mean, I'd love to see all the Wade Boggs stuff. And I mean, there's just so many different ways to slice and dice. This past year, I just got my first 2 vintage tickets. And I thought, boy, am I going to really go down this rabbit hole? And I thought, I better be careful here. I have that tendency. But maybe I'm going to pick up some select games that have meaning. I have a ticket of a Jackie Robinson in his first World Series game, the first time an African-American stepped onto a World Series field. I have the game where Mickey Mantle wrenched his knee.
You have a ticket from that game?
Yeah, I have the ticket for that. And when Joe D kind of waved him off.
Yeah.
And, we all know the story there. Mantle was the fastest guy alive, and then he never was the same. Always had those knee problems. So
that's awesome.
And I'd like to get a ticket. I live a few blocks away here in Chicago from Wrigley Field, and I probably should do a YouTube subscriber contest coinciding with the next Chicago convention. In fact, that's what I'll do. And I have tickets up there and invite 5 to 10 YouTubers to enjoy the game, because it's such a historic stadium.
Yeah, I've never been.
Oh, really? It's well, you're out in Boston, right?
Pennsylvania. We're both in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's select stadium, Fenway and Wrigley.
I've been to Fenway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to Wrigley. I saw a game, and then actually the National where I met you, Chuck. My wife came a few days later, and we went down to Chicago because she had never been there. I'd been there a few times.
Yeah.
And we're walking by the stadium, and I see this line, and the Cubs weren't in town. I'm like, what's that line? It was a tour. And I was like, can I go? And she's like, go for it. I'll go to this restaurant over here, get a margarita. So I got a tour of Wrigley Field and got to go on the field and sit in the dugout. It was so awesome.
Oh, it's just awesome. So, but there's the called shot that was there. Babe Ruth and what was it, the 33 World Series, and I think it was Charlie Root who threw him the.
For me, we were in right field, and being a Pirate fan, I'm like, Clemente was right here.
Isn't that something?
I was like,
there.
I'm standing in hallowed ground.
Yeah, I think of it as that. So that's where I've arrived at, and what does it mean this year? So for me this year, there are 4, maybe 5 cards that I'm really looking for. I'm looking for a T206 Lajoie card where he's holding the bat.
Yep.
In a PSA 6 or higher, and centered. I'm looking for the 53 Bowman Color Mantle in a 7 centered. I'm looking for Willie Mays in 1958 in a 7 or 8 centered.
Okay.
And I'm looking for Jackie 1950 Bowman in a 6. And so that's all I'm looking for this year. Now,
7 or 8, but
yeah, but I love that card, and I've just been through a big Willie Mays run, and I think he is the most underappreciated superstar in the hop.
Really?
I'm of the opinion. Why are his prices not up there with Mantle?
Well,
yeah,
a lot of people, in my opinion, should be higher than Mantle.
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah, I'm lacking in the Mays department of my collection and Clemente as well. I have a lot of gaps.
John, I said I was going to let you go, but because it's a Chicago thing, do you mind if I throw this trivia question out here?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know why I'm asking you. This is my show too. So, Chuck and John, there's a particular player that played for the Chicago Cubs and the Pittsburgh Pirates. He won 4 batting titles, came in second one year, and is not in the Hall of Fame.
Are you talking about Bill Madlock?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
And you're talking about a card from your youth. See the big crease?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I got the D, so my brother wouldn't take it from me. And I've got, like you can just see the crease on this sucker. It is not.
Oh, I love it though. I love it.
I've held on to this all these years, and you got Manny Sanguin. So for me, it's. Mm-hmm. So that was a softball. I knew Chuck would get it. I knew Chuck had no clue.
So fun story. My dad was down. He works for a big corporation, and he had to turn around one of the subsidiaries of that corporation. And so he was down, I think it was Bradenton, Florida, where the Pirates were. So this was back in the late 70s, and he was down there for months on end. And so my mother took my sister and I, and we went down there to see him, and he would take us to see the Pirates, which were a big deal with Dave Parker and Stargell and Senguin, all those guys, and Kent Colby. I remember the We Are Family, and they were, larger than life. Those teams.
That was my team as a kid.
Yeah. So, I remember that era very
well.
well.
All right, John, throw one of yours out.
All right. Don, now, obviously, Chuck, you can chime in if you know the answer here, but this is a little bit related to Don. This player was the only Pittsburgh Pirate that won a batting title in the 1940s.
I'm going to say Archie Vaughan.
That's your answer? Do you have a weigh-in, Chuck?
I was going to say one of the Wayner brothers if they were still around, but no.
Sure.
I would say Archie Vaughan too, but
yeah, it was not Archie Vaughan. Debs Garms. Debs Garms. Garms was with the Pirates in 1940 after being traded by the Boston Braves. He won the title with his .355 average. I guess he was a shortstop because it says, strangely enough, there were only 3 National League shortstops that won a batting title throughout the entire 20th century, and they were all Pittsburgh Pirates. You had Dick Groat, Archie Vaughan, and Honus Wagner.
Wow.
Ernie Banks never won a batting title, huh? Ernie Banks never won a batting title.
They went throughout the entire 20th century. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were all Pittsburgh Pirates. So that was
I gotta be honest,
one.
I've never heard of that guy.
So that one was right down your alley, Don. And very quickly, I have one more here. This is I found interesting. This team was the first in 1941 to wear batting helmets.
Oh, I've heard this before, but I'm not sure the answer. Go ahead, Chuck. You can have the first guess. A team popped in my mind, but I might be confusing the first.
It's a National League team. Well, I'll give you a little bit of a hint. It's a National League team.
Would it be the Reds?
Nope, not the Reds.
That was a wild guess.
That's who I was going to guess.
It was the Dodgers.
Hey, what? You didn't give me a guess.
Oh, I thought. Well, you had plenty of time. You were on the clock there.
Let go. I'm going to say Dodgers.
Okay, correct, Don.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Damn, Don.
After the Dodgers lost their future Hall of Fame shortstop Pee Wee Reese for 2 games after being beamed in the head with a pitch, they lost outfielder Pete Reiser for 17 games due to a beating also. The franchise had enough and designed a batting helmet to protect their players. Brooklyn still won the National League pennant by winning 100 games. They went to the World Series and lost to the Yankees.
Wow.
So the Dodgers, who were in Brooklyn at the time.
Because
a couple of their players got beamed.
With those.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So
I figured Chuck would get mine, but I knew you didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So let me flip the script, if you don't mind. I've given a decided point of view. How do you guys react to that? And by the way, you can tell me I'm full of nonsense here. That's fine. Again, this is just one man's opinions. Vehemently held. But where are you guys going in your journey as collectors? And John, I'm very sorry. I can't remember the origin story of Wade Boggs. And, that's a whole different narrative and collecting narrative. I would love to just fill that gap in my knowledge. And with each of you, I'd like to know, A, how do you react to the kind of thesis I'm presenting? And B, where are you guys going next in your collecting journey?
Do you want to go first, Don? And
yeah, sure, I'll go. So my collection's sort of on pause. And it's been on pause for about a year. Just due to a company we owned that COVID kind of crushed. And so cards are really not in the budget. And I'm actually looking at going to the National in Strongsville and possibly not buying a card, but I'm going to hang out with my friends because that's what I love. And I'm okay with that. But I've really appreciated my collection more. I've told people I made videos all year long this year without one of them being here's what I bought. I picked up this 64 Topps Clemente this week. And not that there's nothing wrong. I made plenty of those. But I just had to find other ways to make videos. And, I'm just appreciating what I have. And I'm almost thankful for people that say, make a VR video, because it gives me a reason to make a video. But so my collection's kind of on pause for now. It'll, just life is kind of dictating that right now.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll grow again at some point. But I don't know that I appreciated it before. Like, I'm kind of looking at a bunch of cards I have that I don't know. Does that card mean that much to me? And thought about moving some of them. To be honest, there's if it's in my display cases, and not necessarily these two because they're random, but you can't see it here. But I've got 56 Topps, 54 Topps, 64 stand-up Topps, and then I got 50 Bowman Hall of Famers.
Wow.
They'll probably stay but obviously my Clementes and Musials will stay.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of George Kells and Robin Roberts, and I'm like, because at one point I wanted a card of every Hall of Famer, and then I kept buying more and more of each one, and I'm sort of at the point, like I don't kind of like you, Chuck. It was like these cards have no meaning to me.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
My background and how I first became a Wade Boggs collector was sort of following your path to some extent, Chuck, but maybe on a more compact schedule. So I started off, my first year is 1978. That was the first year I remember opening packs and so on. And I still have those cards. Some of them are water damaged, but I still have them. And other than purposely selling a few that I regret about maybe 15 years ago, I've kept every single card that I've ever bought, even in the junk wax era. So I have more of a hoarder mentality. But where you were making a comment of today, which is true, there's just so much product out there. I had, of course, grown up like you into the 80s, and okay, well, now here's Score and here's Upper Deck, and then you got into the 90s, and it wasn't just one set from each manufacturer. Now each manufacturer is doing 2, 3, 4 sets.
Right.
And I had collected I basically was opening packs and collecting top sets. That was my collecting. But then it just got too much. There's like too much out there. I'm like, I can't go the route of either opening all this product or trying to complete all these sets because it's just too much. So in a sense of consolidating, I said, okay, what can I focus on that's just not like just blowing up everywhere in the hobby? And I knew some people collected teams. Okay, all the cards of the Detroit Tigers or whatever. But I also knew that there were some player collectors. And I'm like, well, that would be an interesting project to go after, to see how many cards I could get of a particular player. My mom's originally from Massachusetts, so as long as I remember rooting for the Red Sox, been to Fenway Park about 3 or 4 times. And at the time, now this is getting into the late 90s, Wade Boggs was, toward the end of his career. He had moved on. He was finishing up with the Yankees, won the World Series in 96, was then moving on to the Devil Rays to finish his career, near 3,000 hits, was going to be a Hall of Famer. I loved him as a Red Sox, and I had a decent number of cards already. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go with Boggs because I love players who could hit for high average, get on base, rather than just muscle home runs. And so I decided to focus on Boggs and did that for 25 years. Wow. I would buy cards here and there, but it was mainly focused on Boggs. Now, in terms of size, yes, my card catalog back here is full of Boggs cards, so it does take up space. But I really wasn't buying much else. I'd buy a box here and there just for fun, just to rip, maybe put a set together of 2019 Top Series 1 or whatever. Okay, so I'd buy a box. But once I got on YouTube, and rediscovered my love. I always loved vintage cards, but I never had the funds for it. And then I got into Boggs, and that was where all my money was. So I decided to not pause my Boggs collection, but cut back for two reasons. One, I wanted to build a vintage collection. Now I am going after Hall of Famers, so that is more on the larger scheme than a consolidated. But in terms of my Boggs collection, just like with the modern stuff, I'm like, how many autographs cards do I need at Boggs? How many game used cards? I have a decent number of one of ones. One of ones are all over the place. I mean, there's nothing unique anymore. And while I love picking up Boggs cards, to spend one of our Boggs collectors, one of the new was 2013, one of the new 2013 top sets just got released, and autograph, maybe it was Dynasty, out of 5, a patch auto out of 5. They're going after it and all this stuff, and it's like $200 that someone wants on eBay for it. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not paying $200. Maybe there's a time when an out of 5 card was truly special, and back then I may have, well, maybe not $200 even. Today, I'm like, I have 100 cards that are serial numbered out of 5. I don't need to spend.
Any autographs you have? You must have hundreds.
I think I have over 700 certified autograph, like packed from company issued autograph cards of Wade Boggs. What? So it's like the law of diminishing returns. My enjoyment. I will always collect Wade Boggs, but I'm picking up some of the lower end stuff just to keep my collection going. I'm not spending $100, $150, $200 on Boggs cards. That money is going to build my vintage collection, which I also get extreme enjoyment of. So that's where I am. I'm sort of a mixture of different things, and obviously I'm not worried about space. I can fill this room, and eventually I'll have an entire basement, so I can hoard as much as I want in the future. So
yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I just think it's so interesting to watch. Year after year, as you follow. As we follow each other, you see the evolution of sets and collecting interest. And I just find it very interesting how vintage ultimately grabs most of us, however you define it. But, whether it's anyway, but typically, let's say the 50s era or pre-war. And there are some amazing collections out there. There's an amazing trove of knowledge. And so I definitely watch those videos just to learn. Yeah. I'm just fascinated by it. And, when I hold one of these T206 cards in my hand, it just, I always get this kind of shiver down the back of my neck. This has been around, this card has been floating around before this hobby was like the hobby that it is today. And I think, it probably was sitting, if it's in this condition, it was probably sitting in somebody's box untouched for 50 years. Yeah. And then somebody graded it, or, think about the kid that opened it or the dad that threw this into the box after smoking the cigarette. I just think it's really neat. And of course, just being a fan of baseball history, I can't get enough of that.
Right.
There's just something about this artifact. And I'll tell you, in a sentimental way, collecting has allowed my father and I to connect with his baseball memories from when he was coming up through that golden era of baseball in the 50s. And, he has very strong opinions about players, famous and not famous, and the stories so it's really opened up an interesting dialogue there. And paying it forward, I guess, for me, sharing that with my sons has been a way to, open up, things we can talk about. And, teenage boys don't really want to talk about the things that I'm interested in all the time. So it's where I can meet them. And, and hopefully as they get older, they'll recognize, that's a bridge, if you will. So I think these hobbies have many different, it's almost like a Swiss Army knife. We derive enjoyment, but it also allows us to connect with others in this community, and also, people that matter to us in our personal lives as well.
Yeah. The thing I like about vintage is, as you said, Chuck, some of these cards, and, I don't know technically when, collecting sports cards started. I know there were some early pioneers, but from my memory, I would say, not too much earlier than the 70s. Maybe sometime in the 70s, you started seeing. I know my local card shop opened in the late 70s, or 78, 79. So maybe mid 70s, you started to get these group of collectors, and hey, let's put these in sleeves, or to try to protect them, or whatever, to preserve and collect them. Prior to that, like you said, it was in kids' bicycle spokes, or in a shoebox, or somewhere you didn't. Today, what do you see? You open a pack of cards and you immediately have that penny sleeve and top loader, because
Right.
as soon as you get it, and you have to make sure you don't touch it, you touch it and it goes right into everything is all, because it's all like collected now. And but back then, you get cards like just like the one that Don showed off, that it's in his collection. But at some point, unless that card gets thrown away, that card is going to be in someone else's collection, and they're going to turn it over. And what's this D? And why is this card so beat up? I wonder what the history of that card is.
Yeah.
So, I like having cards, well, because of budget mainly, but I don't mind having 3s and 4s with, some rounded corners, or maybe a little crease here and there, because there's a story behind those well-loved cards. They may not grade very high, they may not worth, a huge amount of money, but there's a story behind all of those. Newer cards, you don't get that. You're like, oh yeah, I pulled that from a pack and immediately went into hard plastic and got graded, and here you go, it's a 9 or a 10.
Right.
You don't get that history of it.
So. And John, fortunately, there were people that were collecting back in the 20s and 30s. And the reason I pulled this card is from the Lionel Carter collection.
Yeah.
Like this guy pulled stuff out of packs, and
wow, that's a beauty.
Yeah, he kept those cards forever. And what's the other guy's name? Jesse Burdick?
Burdick, yeah.
Burdick. Those guys have been collecting. He wrote all basically the E's and all those food cards and the E95 caramel. Like he's the guy that came up with that. And
but they were a small number. I mean, it was a much smaller group. Yeah, there were certainly ones
that guys that did that. That this card, like I literally bought this card because it said Lionel Carter. I wanted a card from his collection. Yeah. But Chuck, I think it would be doing a disservice if you didn't show some of your cards, if you have them there, because if you guys are new to Chuck's channel, the grades and quality of the cards he goes after. He kind of mentioned earlier he wanted a PSA 7 and 53 Bowman Mantle, but that's a nice job of your hand there, brother. But wait till you see some of the cards this guy has. They're amazing.
Yeah, I've been fortunate, and I'm older than most of you guys, and I guess I've been, I know I'm fortunate that I have the money to spend on the cards, and I like having them centered. So when I got back in, I was a sharp corners guy. And I thought that was the epitome. And I realized sharp corners are kind of down the pantheon. The centering really matters. And,
that's me.
And so I like the red. I mean, I want it all. So I realized if you want the registration, the sharp-ish corners or sharp corners and centering, you got to get up in these higher grades. So I'm just pulling from my display cases in front of me. I have one display case. So I just showed this in my January video. So if you've seen that, it's not going to be too interesting to people. Let me see here. Oh, heavens.
Typically, when you tilt them back towards you, the glare is not as bad. There you go.
Yeah.
So
it's a 7, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a 57. Let me go a little bit earlier with Willie. This is a prized one. This is a 54. It's beautifully centered. It's a 7. I also have a 54 Bowman, beautifully centered in a 7.
Oh, I love that card.
Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful? This is my latest Willie. It's a 60. Beautifully centered.
8. Wow.
Here are the 2 cards I bought during COVID from the Griffey proceeds. So I had this one, and here's the story. I wanted this one in an 8. And then because of COVID, this thing just shot to the moon. It's never come down. So I got on the FOMO thing and I got it in a 6.5. I love this version. I'll never get rid of it.
Yep.
And then I got this Ted Williams. Again, I wanted this in an 8, but the centering is just exquisite. And it's just a beautiful example. I really bought the card.
Yeah.
Not the great. Then here are the 2 tickets. This is the Jackie Robinson First World Series game, 1947.
Oh.
And it's a 1. But let me tell you about tickets that I had to learn. Who gives a hoot that it's a 1?
Right.
It's a 1 because it was ripped by the Andy Frayne usher. And you know what? I want that to be ripped. I don't want a pristine version. Who the hell wants that? I want it stained with mayonnaise or mustard. Or
beer. You know that guy went to the game.
Yeah.
Now you can't even get a ticket. It's all on your freaking phone.
Oh, I hate that. And so then here's the ticket from Mickey Mantle's game where he wrenched his knee. Again, it's in a 1. But again, look at it. Isn't that a beautiful ticket?
Yeah. And what do the backs of those look like, Chuck?
So here's the back of the Mantle game. So it's kind of technical. Same with the Jackie. It's
I thought maybe there was an ad for
nothing exciting like that. So I can pull out the Gaudis, but for folks who haven't checked my channel out, and I don't think many of us go back into the archive, but I went through in all my 33 Gaudis as I was collecting them and telling stories. My 33 Gaudi is a PSA 5 and up or higher, 6, 7, 8. It's a great set. My hope is that in the next few years that I will be in a position to complete that set in the PSA 5 or up. And that, of course, means, the Ruth cards and the Lajoie. And I know damn well what those cost. But, my hope is that I really, really want to complete that set. That's my first love.
Is that you're closest to finishing?
That's it. And then, but I derive so much enjoyment just from the comments. I mean, the color, the stories. And that said, if you deconstruct it, there are so many Hall of Famers in there, including names that you just don't hear about or think about every day. Like Archie Vaughn. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. You don't think about him every day. He's in that set.
Right.
And I think it was Joe Silverjackify said that, he has the 33 Jimmy Fox on it. That is on his kind of like wish list. Well, 2 Jimmy Foxes, and they're both the same card. It's just like the Lou Gehrig. They're both the same card.
Right.
A low number and a high number, and anything under number 52 is considered a low number. And low numbers are tougher in that 33 Gaudi set. Well, card number 29 is the Jimmy Fox. So he'd be better served getting, I think it's card 154, which is the other Jimmy Fox. Same card, dramatically less cost. So whatever grade you're looking at too. So there's just so much texture in history, whatever you collect. And, I see bats in the background there, John. I would love to own a bat that was game used. So, how many of them do you want? I don't know. Probably not.
I have it's a Red Sox, Yankees, and Devil Rays Boggs game used bat. And that's enough for me. Just, 1 each. My other great friend who's a Boggs collector, he cannot stop buying. I bet you he has like 12 game used bats at least. He sees one if he can get it, and I'm like, I don't know. One is enough for me, and then I move on to something else. And so I have that's the game used Red Sox hat. Yeah, the Boggs, Red Sox cleats. I don't need multiple. There's some Yankees cleats there.
Right.
That's good. I got that. I would love someday to actually have a regular game used home Red Sox jersey. They cost like $4,000 to $5,000. That's not my budget right now, but that would be that's the last dream. I wanted those Red Sox, the hat and the cleats. The last piece of the puzzle for me for Boggs in terms of memorabilia would be a home Red Sox game used jersey. So
let me press you in light of what I said tonight. Why not take 1 year, just swallow hard, and say you take your whole budget or however long, that's amortized, and just do it, because you'll never regret getting that piece, because it's going to always have in value. It's his home jersey.
Yep. And
I would argue that the sacrifice of not spending because you blew your budget on one highly coveted item. So that's the approach I'm trying to say. take.
Yeah.
And it's really tough as a collector because I always want to get stuff. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
I always want to add. But I would rather get something that has that kind of eternal value that I know that every time I look at it, it's going to just resonate with me. And I'll never have a regret, even if it means I don't get something. And I think that's an important point to make.
Yeah, it's a great point and method to take. I just don't know if I have the willpower. And it's like, yeah, is it
Fair enough.
No. But I mean, you make a very valid point. One, game used jerseys don't come up very often. So it's, but I could say I'm going to take a year off and have the money set aside. So when one does come available, even if it's 3 years from now, I'd have that money set aside. So in that theory, I could do that. I guess I would have to like prioritize just like you. Okay, well, what's more important in terms of my wish list or something like that, and how far above is one above another, and am I willing to sacrifice? For me, yeah, that would actually be somewhat of a struggle because I like to build my collection, but then again, are certain cards higher up on my want list than lower, and quite possible. So yeah.
Well, it's been a crackling conversation. I've had a lot of fun, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time, including the viewers. But I haven't been on YouTube in a while, and this is just fun.
No, that's I want to get you on, and my goal is I try to get guests that people don't always see on lives or things that I know and have interesting stories, and even though we haven't really communicated in a long time, I've always enjoyed your channel and your friendship, and I was very glad that you said yes when I asked you to come on. So
yeah, well, thank you for inviting me, and John, I'm glad we've had the chance to get to know each other a little bit better through this conversation tonight, and I'm eager to see what's next for your collections. Eager to see what the comments will be to this conversation tonight. However they come in, whatever.
There's only 3 people that watch, Chuck. So
yeah. now, Chuck, do you obviously you will be? I'm assuming at next year's national when it's back in Chicago. Do you have plans on going to Cleveland?
No, but I will be at the Chicago one. And like I said earlier, I think I need to do something. Like I said, I'm blocks from Wrigley. I have a lot of tickets up there. Great seats. I mean, like second, third row, right behind home plate type of thing. And 1914 club.
Okay, I'll go.
Yeah, it's just real good. But for me, it's a place where I have a lot of life events happen there. I played catch with my sons there. Just a lot of stories there, and so I'm a rank sentimentalist when it comes to Wrigley Field. I've always said about a game there, you can see, you're not going to see a good team necessarily, but you'll never have a bad day at Wrigley Field.
Right.
And my wife and I, when we were dating, I mean, there's just so much life of my life that's taken place there. So I'd love to share that, because for people coming in and out of town, it's kind of a shrine to visit, and the neighborhood around it is so much fun now. There's a lot of great restaurants and bars and stuff. So I kind of was inspired by that idea through this conversation tonight. So let's put a pin in that to revisit.
Excellent. Well, Chuck, again, thanks for coming on and being our guest.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it. Love again hearing about your background, your story, and your thoughts about collecting and stuff like that. I'm sure we're going to get some great comments about that. And again, of course, for those of you who have been following up to this point, I will have a link to Chuck's YouTube channel. Definitely go check it out. Watch some of his channels, and would love feedback on all the topics that we brought up. Some of the things that we mentioned. Do you agree? Disagree? What are your thoughts on how you collect versus how maybe the 3 of us collect differently? And with that, that's all we have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.